What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So heading towards that November 12th release, there's still a lot of questions that people have around the PlayStation 5 outside of games, like the UI, which we have still not seen. People are curious also about the teardown with how the system's put together. And then, of course, backwards compatibility. That keeps coming up because people seem still kind of confused around the situation. Well, it looks like Sony has been updating their website consistently now, and people have spotted several new lines that have been added in the source code, giving us an idea as to some features for backwards compatibility, as well as new features being added for next gen. We'll talk about that here today. Also, it looks like more of that Giga leak has found its way online for Nintendo, and it actually points to a successor to the Game Boy Advance that was not the DS. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're brand new here, hit that red subscribe button down below. And we're gonna start today with an event that will be taking place in just a few hours after this video goes up. And that, of course, is the new Smash Bros. Ultimate character that will be added. You can see this tweet here that was put out yesterday saying the next Smash Bros. Ultimate DLC fighter will be revealed tomorrow at 7 a.m. Pacific. The video presentation will be roughly 3 minutes long, followed by a brief message from director Masahiro Sakurai. Tune in here tomorrow. So, all right, who do we think the character is going to be? I'm going to go with either Dante or Travis Touchdown. More so Travis Touchdown. I think that makes a lot of sense with No More Heroes 3 coming up, because keep in mind, Smash Bros. Can also work very, very well as a way to market a game and kind of let people know about it. But who knows? It could be anyone. Like, they could just do some crazy thing out of left field, and that's generally what I like more so than anything else, is something we don't expect to be dropped in there. And you know what? There haven't been a lot of leaks online about this, no rumors, nothing, so this could be a lot of fun. It's 3 minutes, so I guess they'll show us the character, they'll show us some of the moves and different pieces of that character for gameplay very quickly, and they'll move on to a brief message from Sakurai. Now, that could be a few things. It could really just be him kind of talking about the roadmap for the rest of this Fighter's Pass, right, and explaining when we can expect the rest of it. He could also be talking about how this could be his last Fighter's Pass for Smash and then he's moving on to a new project. Maybe he gets to make a new game. That would be cool, but we'll see what happens tomorrow morning. Make sure you check it out, 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Also, leave your best guess for which character you think will be added to Smash Bros. Ultimate. We'll come back and see if anyone got it right. Oh, and we did have an update for that CD Projekt Red Cyberpunk crunch situation after Jason Schreier, of course, posted his story. This tweet was sent out, you can see here, by Adam Badowski, who is the head of CD Projekt Red Studios, saying, "These last 6 weeks are our final sprint on a project we've all spent much of our lives on. Something we care for deeply. The majority of the team understands that push, especially in light of the fact that we've just sent the game to CERT, and every day brings us visibly closer to shipping a game we want to be proud of. This is one of the hardest decisions I've had to make, but everyone is well compensated for their every extra hour they put in, and like in recent years, 10% of the annual profit our company generates in 2020 will be split directly among the team." So I think the issue people are seeing here is that they originally said there wouldn't be crunch, and then they had to turn around and now they're saying there will be, even though they delayed the game multiple times. It really comes down to the scope of this game seems to have gotten out of hand, and the management around the project just could not keep up with it. So it was pushed again. Now we have to rely on crunch just to hit that like 4th release date that we've seen. That's really the issue here. I'm sure people will get paid well, right? I'm sure that will be, but if it's mandatory crunch, that's one thing as compared to if it's optional. If you're like, hey, we have some extra hours to pick up if you want them, yeah, people will probably do that. But the whole crunch culture thing is a problem in gaming right now with developers, because you only have so many developers out there, and if they keep getting burned out, you might actually have a problem just finding people that make some of these games. Also, we did have our PlayStation Plus games revealed for October. It's gonna be October 6th. You can see the title card here for them. We have Need for Speed Payback, and we have Vampire. This is much better than the Xbox games for gold. I didn't care enough to even go over it, because like the big game for that, I think, was Sphinx from the original Xbox. So yeah, not great. Need for Speed Payback, Need for Speed Heat's better, but I mean, it's there, so you can try it. But Vampire, I think, is a different enough game that's worth going in and at least hitting the claim and download button. Might as well for this one and try it out, see what you think about it. But not a bad month. It's gonna be interesting when we get the PlayStation 5 out there and see how they continue to handle PlayStation Plus. I know they're gonna have the PlayStation Selection, right, where they're adding a bunch of PS4 games, but will they still add anything else in there from like third parties and stuff as we go forward with the PS5. I think it's going to take a little while for that overall library to build, and then they can start doing it. But not bad here for October. Check out Vampire. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with the PlayStation 5 features, backwards compatibility that seem to have been dug up out of the source code on Sony's website as they have been adding commands and different lines of code to it. And let's go right over here on Reddit. They seem to go through them and then compile all of the different lines that are showing some features, as well as pieces that are kind of interesting for the backwards compatibility side. We can see one line, for example, says this PS4 game isn't supported with your PS5's current system software. We're continuing to make more PS4 games playable on PS5. Update your PS5 and then try playing the game. And then below that, we do have PS5 boost mode enabled. So it does appear that we're going to get more and more PS4 games added over time for, I guess, 100% compatibility. There is a chance that it will launch with less than what Sony is saying right now, because that could be more or less a plan going forward. 99% of PS4 games will be playable eventually. Like, that is a possibility. So keep that in mind. Remember, Microsoft over time added more and more Xbox 360 games as they went along. Sure, they had to change some things because there was different architecture between them, but that's something we could see from Sony here, even with PlayStation 4 games. I do like the idea of that PS5 boost mode, which is expected. I think it was even mentioned slightly at times, but it seems that according to the line, they're going to stick with PS5 boost mode as the name for it. Remember, the PS4 Pro had something added through firmware as well, so good to see. I'd be curious to see if it will allow us to get maybe better performance out of things like Monster Hunter World, of course, or maybe we get some sort of patch, we go back, and we take care of Bloodborne finally, right? Give us that 60 frames per second mode in Bloodborne. Someone's got to do it. It deserves that treatment. And I mean, someone at Sony. I know we've had people actually go in and patch and have the 60 frames per second mode that is apparently there, it's possible, turned on, and it looks so much better. So, like, come on, Sony. If fans are able to do it and they're spending the time to do it, like, you've got to at least go back and give Bloodborne its due with that. Anyway, on top of the backwards compatibility stuff there, we also have cross-gen party chat between the PS4, PS5, and PlayStation app. And to go a little further than that, cloud saves. It does say PlayStation Plus cloud saves can be transferred manually to PS Now, and vice versa using the save data management functionality on PS5. Hopefully that means, of course, with the download to PS5 function, that we can transfer back and forth for PS4 if we need to. And then a little further down, Reset Era managed to come across a few other things, which includes wish lists on PS5, good addition there, and that parties can include up to 100 people. Okay. 100 people. Wow, that would be something else. Maybe Among Us gets like a battle royale mode or something, and we can just fit 100 people in there trying to just argue it out. Can you imagine 99 other people talking in your ear all at once in something like a PlayStation party? That would be absolute insanity. But I can't imagine it's gonna be too much longer, especially with some of the source code being added in and even found now, for Sony to finally sit down and go over the UI, go over the extra features. We've heard all these rumors about an AI assistant even being part of it, but I kind of hope they split it up. They have one basically pre-recorded video they put on YouTube that's about the UI, the extra features, and they have a separate one that shows us what the PlayStation 5 can do in backwards compatibility mode with PS4 games. Microsoft sent systems out. I don't know if Sony's going to do that this early, but Microsoft sent the systems out, the Series X, so that people could do that for them and publish videos all over the place. And we've seen some really cool results from that. So I'm hoping Sony is ready to go and is just waiting for October to start up so that every week we can get some new piece of information leading up to launch for the PS5. Next up, let's talk about the war on piracy from Nintendo. They're not messing around, right? We've talked about this a lot. They went after resellers for team executors like SX Lite. Remember, they put the video out of the Switch Lite being completely hacked by them by opening the system up, soldering to the chip, doing some crazy stuff to bypass security, and websites were carrying this and reselling it, of course, with instructions as well as to how to hack your Switch Lite, all of this stuff. Nintendo didn't like that. They've gone through quite a bit in order to circumvent the situation that plagued the first like 20 million Switch systems, right? Where it was a paperclip and you were in, that was it. Seemed to be something NVIDIA kind of slept on. Either way, they did fix it. Team Executor went around that, And now we have different websites being sued into the ground by Nintendo, trying to shut them down for reselling these. Chips was one of them, and it seems anyway that they have settled or figured out a judgment with Nintendo, and it is certainly an example that Nintendo wants to try to set and make it fairly public so that sites don't go around attempting to sell these chips. Now, Torrent Freak did have an image of the judgment here, the final judgment, still apparently needs to be signed off on, but what's happening here is Chips has agreed to pay $2 million to Nintendo. It goes a little further than that. Apparently, Nintendo is also taking the URL that is now theirs, and they can no longer post anything about social media with Chips, and any stock they have of these Team Executor chips, the SX Core and the SX Lite chips, have to be destroyed on site. They can no longer sell any of those. And this, again, certainly an example. Will they actually have to pay Nintendo $2 million? There's a chance they won't have to, because we've seen in the past these kind of judgments just be like for show. They could say, hey, you owe us $20,000 really behind the scenes, right? They could have talked this out. But they could say, hey, give us $2 million. Like, Nintendo could be petty like that. I don't rule it out, because Nintendo doesn't mess around when it comes to their IPs, their systems. They saw what happened to the PSP. They're not looking for that to happen to the Switch down the road, right? So yeah, don't mess with Nintendo. They still have another 8 sites, apparently, that they're going after here. And after seeing this and how quickly this was resolved, which in terms of court systems and all this, it was pretty fast. I think it was like several months, or maybe a little over a year now, I think. But it was pretty quick for that. I think it was a little under a year overall from start to finish for this since we saw the story, but Nintendo's not messing around. I'll be curious to see what happens with the other 8 websites, but yeah, Chips got hit pretty hard, mostly we made an example out of. Next up, let's talk about the Nintendo Giga Leak along with something called Iris. Now, of course, we know after the Game Boy Advance SP, we had the DS, and the DS absolutely exploded in the market, massive amounts of sales. It's something that Nintendo may never see again, right? Over 150 million DS systems were sold. It was the default handheld for a while, right? The 2-screen setup was really big for that system, but what if it didn't have 2 screens? Check this tweet out right here. This is from Waluigi saying, in today's Nintendo leak, there is also stuff for Iris, a canceled Game Boy Advance SP successor. There is also a manual in Japanese for it, so it has a full SDK, and it looks like an enhanced Game Boy Advance. In response, Terra tweeted saying, I've skimmed through the SDK files, and for the most part, it's essentially a Game Boy Advance with Nintendo DS hardware, just with a few differences here and there, dual CPU, the same 3D GPU as the DS, no second screen, no X and Y buttons, no touchscreen, no Wi-Fi, no mic. So it's kind of, I guess, just a cut down version of that DS. And I think the biggest thing here is that the DS's features really sold it. The dual screen design was so weird at the time. It was like mind blowing that people really took notice. And I mean, credit for Nintendo, they took advantage of it and did some really creative things with it. But a Game Boy Advance successor, I assume it would have looked very, very similar to the Game Boy Advance SP, right? Where it still folds closed. It just has the one screen, apparently less buttons, but a more powerful system. And keep in mind, the DS still had to go between 2 different screens. I wonder if they would have been able to squeeze more power out of that system if it was just dealing with one screen. And then I also wonder if it would have cost less, and if they still would have been able to move that system like they did the DS. Like I said, I think the biggest thing was the features. Wi-Fi, we talked about this in the video. When they put up Wi-Fi on screen, people actually applauded and cheered in that room at E3, which is weird now, but back then it was a big deal to have Wi-Fi, I guess, in your handheld gaming system. But a successor to the Game Boy Advance SP that would have looked probably very similar. Maybe they would have gone widescreen with it at least, but I don't know. I think I'm good with the DS. It just would have been curious to see what this could have been. Oh, and one other funny little piece here. Nintendo Everything like compiled a lot of the different tweets and things that were being sent around this new leak for Nintendo. One of them seems to be, as you can see here, a tweet mentioning that someone at Nintendo advocating downloading an emulator from the net for testing. That's kind of funny. When we talk about Nintendo's history with ROMs, taking these sites down, How would they get that emulator though? Right? Yeah, it's just funny to see them talking back and forth about, oh, you gotta test that ROM? Just grab that emulator on EMU Paradise, you'd be good. And in our last bit of news, have you ever wondered what some of these systems, after we see the final product, like for the PlayStation 5, that's the one I'd be curious to see, what they look like as they go through the prototyping and concept stages, trying to figure out what the best shape, look, all this is for functionality, and of course the aesthetic of it. Have you ever wondered what kind of designs they come up with and how they figure some of this out? Well, there was an interesting article that went up on Medium, you can see here, that says, in late 2017, a few small hardware teams quietly visited a handful of Xbox gamers' homes in Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York City with several black foam boxes in tow. They asked gamers to unplug their current Xbox and put the new shape in its place. And you can see this image here. Those are apparently all of the different designs that they had in mind for the Xbox Series X. Some of them look like a larger Series S, just a bigger rectangle with the big grill on top, right? Others, like the one all the way to the left, is just like a big circle. I guess that's the bottom of it. And then we have one that looks like just a much larger, I guess just a beefier Xbox One X. So several different designs, sure. But the idea of them going to a house, someone who's playing the Xbox and is like, take your Xbox out, we're gonna drop this foam brick in here. We're not gonna tell you what it is. We just need to see if it works and what you think of it and how it looks. And after all that, they came up with the tower. That was apparently their design process there. It worked out. I think people are kind of warming up to the idea of what these next-gen systems look like, but yes, they are towers. Either way, it is kind of funny. Would you let someone come in and just drop a foam box in your entertainment center, take some notes, and then leave? Let me know. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Nick, saying the VCS will probably show up with a Raspberry Pi floating loose inside the shell. See, I know you're joking about that, but there is an Atari product that is a Raspberry Pi. Like, take a look at this. They sell it on Amazon, at Micro Center, and we had joked before that this is what they were gonna send me for the VCS. Now, they took pictures, like I said, out by the pallet. It's a little strange. It certainly is like, hey, look at us. We're actually shipping the product we promised you. But at least they're trying to provide some sort of proof. I don't know. You know what? If this shows up, I'll just be like, yeah, that's about right. But here's hoping that in like a month or so, you guys see me post a video that says, hey, my Atari VCS showed up. Let's see what they sent me. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, it really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today, whether it's the PlayStation 5 features that appear to have been found in the source code. Do you want them to talk more about backwards compatibility, showing examples with, for example, frame rate counters, all this stuff, or you just want to hear them talk about more and more new games? I'm curious if backwards compatibility is a big moving factor for people going into next generation, if they should upgrade so that their current games play better. Also, what about the Game Boy Advance successor? Do you like the DS, or would you have been really curious what Iris could have been? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.